The morning started like any other for Eleanor Thorne. She was sitting at the breakfast table, sipping her tea and going through hotel reservation reports. The Blue Haven Hotel had been her life's work for 30 years, a luxury property overlooking the ocean, and she was proud of how well it was running. The staff respected her, guests loved her, and her daughter Isabella often said, "Mom, you've built something no one can ever take away from us." That belief shattered with one phone call. Her phone buzzed. It was the bank manager. His voice sounded strange, hesitant. "Mrs. Thorne, we just wanted to confirm the $2.5 million loan taken against the Blue Haven Hotel. Was this authorized by you?" Eleanor froze. "What loan?" she asked, her voice tightening. "Ma'am, the documents were signed under your name and approved last night. The money was released this morning." Eleanor's teacup slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. She could barely breathe. "I never signed anything." Within the hour, she was at her lawyer Victor Hale's office, clutching the copies of the documents the bank had sent. Victor carefully studied them, his expression darkening. "Eleanor, these are forged. Whoever did this had access to your personal information and your signature. This is criminal fraud." Eleanor's mind spun. Only a few people had access to her records. Isabella, the hotel accountant, and Daniel, her son-in-law. A sick feeling settled in her stomach. Daniel had always been too smooth, too quick with his promises. He was charming at family dinners but reckless with money, always chasing new business ideas that failed. Eleanor had once warned Isabella, "Be careful with him, he wants an easy life." But Isabella defended him. As Eleanor was leaving the lawyer's office, her phone vibrated with a message. It was from Daniel. "You'll never find me. The money's gone, and so am I. Enjoy paying the debt, Eleanor." The message hit her like a punch. He wasn't just a thief, he was mocking her. For a few seconds, Eleanor stood in the middle of the street, heart pounding. She expected tears to come, but instead something else rose inside her, cold, focused anger. She opened a tracking app on her phone. Months ago, she had installed a GPS locator on the smartphone she had given Daniel for his birthday. It wasn't out of malice. She had been worried about his late-night disappearances and wanted peace of mind. Now that decision saved her. The screen showed his location, Grand Cayman, West Bay Road, near a luxury villa. Eleanor's lips curved into a grim smile. "So, you think you're safe," she whispered. She drove straight to the hotel and called her accountant, ordering every business account frozen immediately. Then she called Victor and told him to begin legal action to challenge the forged loan. Finally, she called her trusted private investigator, Samir Dravon. "Samir," she said, her voice steady, "I need you to dig into Daniel's recent transactions, travel records, everything. I want proof, enough to bring him down legally." Samir hesitated for a second. "Eleanor, are you sure you want to go this far?" Her voice was like ice. "He took my life's work and dared me to find him." "Yes, I'm sure." By the evening, Samir sent her the first report. Daniel had transferred most of the loan money into offshore accounts, bought luxury items, and rented a seaside villa. Eleanor sat alone in her office, staring at the report. She could almost hear Daniel's mocking laugh in her head. But she wasn't going to let him win. She called Isabella. "Mom, did you find out anything?" Isabella's voice was trembling. "Yes," Eleanor said quietly. "Daniel forged the documents. I have proof. And I know where he is." There was silence on the line, then a sob. "I can't believe he did this to us." Eleanor's tone softened. "Listen to me, Bella. This is not the end. I will fix this. But you have to be strong." That night, Eleanor opened her laptop and booked a flight to the Cayman Islands. She didn't tell Isabella. She didn't tell anyone. As she packed her suitcase, she looked at the framed photograph of her late husband on the dresser. "You built this hotel with me," she whispered. "I won't let him destroy what we made." Her hands were steady now. There was no fear, no panic. Only determination. The next morning, as the sun rose, Eleanor stood at the airport gate, her passport in hand. Her heart was heavy, but her eyes were sharp. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was on her way to hunt the man who betrayed her. The flight to the Cayman Islands felt endless. Eleanor sat by the window, staring at the endless stretch of clouds below her. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't even afraid. What burned inside her was something colder, heavier. The kind of quiet rage that grows when someone tries to destroy everything you've worked for. Every few minutes, she checked the tracking app. Daniel's phone hadn't moved much. The red dot sat in the same location, a villa near the beach. He was comfortable, probably drinking, maybe laughing, thinking he had beaten her. When the plane landed, Eleanor stepped out into the thick Caribbean air. The smell of salt and sun hit her, but she barely noticed. She carried only one small suitcase. She wasn't here to relax, she was here for war. She checked into a modest hotel, nothing like the luxury places Daniel was staying in. The receptionist smiled kindly, but Eleanor kept her responses short. Her mind was already on her next steps. That evening, she opened her laptop. Samir, the private investigator back home, had sent her another report. Daniel had transferred half of the stolen money to a numbered account. He had purchased expensive watches, designer suits, and even reserved a yacht for the weekend. Eleanor stared at the receipts and shook her head. He doesn't even try to hide it, she thought. He thinks he's untouchable. But Daniel had made a mistake. He underestimated Eleanor. The next morning, she put on a wide-brimmed hat, sunglasses, and walked along West Bay Road. Her heart pounded as she spotted the villa from a distance. Tall white walls, tropical plants, and a black sports car parked in front. Through the open balcony doors, she caught a glimpse of him, Daniel Mercer, in a silk shirt, holding a glass of champagne, laughing with two strangers. The sight made her stomach twist. That was her hotel money in his hand. Her sweat and years of sacrifice turned into his party fuel. Her phone buzzed. It was Isabella. "Mom, where are you? You sound different." Eleanor kept her voice calm. "I'm handling things. Don't worry." "I can't believe he did this," Isabella whispered, her voice breaking. "I trusted him. I thought he loved me." Eleanor's jaw tightened. Love doesn't steal from family. Remember that. After the call, Eleanor sat by the beach, watching the waves crash. She knew she couldn't just walk into the villa and drag him back. This wasn't about revenge and anger. It was about justice. If she acted recklessly, he could slip away again. So she called Victor Hale, her lawyer. "Victor, I need you to prepare everything. Fraud, forgery, theft, stack every charge possible." Victor's voice was steady. "I'll coordinate with the Cayman authorities. We'll need solid proof." "I have it," Eleanor said firmly. "Samir has already gathered the documents." By afternoon, Samir emailed her scanned copies of forged papers, bank transfers, and even security footage of Daniel entering the bank. It was enough to destroy him legally. But Eleanor wanted to look him in the eye first. She wanted him to know she wasn't broken. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She sat by the window of her hotel room, looking at the glowing lights of the villas down the shore. She thought of her late husband, of the years they spent building the hotel from nothing. Every brick, every room, every chandelier had been chosen with care. And now, a selfish man had dared to gamble it all. Her anger wasn't wild anymore. It was sharp, controlled. The kind of anger that plans every move before striking. The next morning, she dressed neatly, tied her silver hair back, and walked straight to the villa's gates. The guard barely looked up when she passed. She carried herself with too much confidence to be questioned. Inside, she found Daniel lounging by the pool with his glass of champagne. His tan skin glistened under the sun, and he wore a satisfied smirk. For a moment, he didn't notice her. But when he finally turned, his smile froze. "Eleanor?" His voice cracked. "What are you? How did you?" She didn't flinch. She walked closer, her eyes locked on his. "You thought I wouldn't find you," she said quietly. "But I did." Daniel laughed nervously, trying to regain control. "You're wasting your time. The hotel is gone. You're drowning in debt, and I'm free. You should have stayed home, old woman." Eleanor leaned in, her voice cold. "No, Daniel. You should have stayed honest." She dropped a folder of papers onto the table in front of him. Evidence of his fraud, every transfer, every forgery. His hands trembled as he flipped through them. What is this?" he stammered. "Your end," Eleanor said simply. Daniel's smirk returned for a brief moment. "Even with this, I win. That hotel is tied to my loan. You'll lose everything. I'll still be free." But Eleanor only smiled faintly, as if she were holding back a bigger secret. She turned away, walking back toward the gate. "Enjoy your freedom while you can, Daniel," she said. "It won't last long." Daniel sat frozen, clutching the folder, suddenly realizing she wasn't bluffing. Eleanor walked out into the sunlight, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with certainty. She had just started the game, and Daniel had no idea how much she had already planned. This was not a broken woman chasing after what she lost. This was a mother preparing her final move. The air inside the villa was heavy with the smell of alcohol and perfume. Music played from a speaker, and half-empty champagne bottles sat on the marble counter. Daniel Mercer had turned Eleanor's stolen money into his playground. But the moment he saw her standing there, something shifted. His smirk faltered, his confident swagger broke, and his eyes darted nervously. "Eleanor," he muttered, setting down his glass. How did you get here?" Eleanor stepped forward slowly, every movement steady and deliberate. "You told me I'd never find you," she said quietly, her voice calm, almost too calm. "But here I am." Daniel let out a short laugh, trying to mask the crack in his confidence. "So what? You can't touch me here. You're just an old woman out of her depth." Eleanor ignored the insult. She reached into her bag and placed a thick folder on the glass table. The papers inside slid across the surface, revealing stamped documents, signatures, and bank receipts. Daniel's face turned pale as he opened it. Where did you get these?" "Samir," Eleanor replied, her tone sharp. "He followed every wire transfer, every forged document, every lie you built. It's all here." Daniel's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. Then he laughed again, louder this time, forcing confidence back into his voice. "This won't matter. That loan is tied to your hotel. Whether I'm caught or not, you'll still lose everything. Your life's work is gone. You'll walk away with nothing." For the first time, Eleanor's lips curved into a faint smile. She leaned closer, her eyes locked on his. "That's what you think," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Eleanor straightened her back and spoke clearly, her words cutting through the music and the sound of waves outside. "I sold the hotel 2 weeks ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel blinked rapidly, his smirk collapsing. No, that's impossible." "It's true," Eleanor said firmly. "The Blue Haven doesn't belong to me anymore. The deal was finalized and registered. The property was transferred legally. Which means the loan you took using forged documents," she paused, letting the words sink in, "is worthless." Daniel's jaw dropped. His voice shook with disbelief. "No, you're lying. You're bluffing." Eleanor pulled out another paper, the official deed transfer signed and stamped. She laid it flat in front of him. "Check for yourself." Daniel's eyes darted across the document. His face turned red, then white. His breathing quickened. For the first time, he looked truly cornered. "You planned this," he hissed. Eleanor's voice stayed cold and steady. "I suspected you'd try something eventually. That's why I sold the hotel when I did. I protected what mattered before you could ruin it. You stole air, Daniel. Nothing more." Daniel's anger flared. He slammed his hand on the table, making the champagne glasses rattle. "You think you've beaten me? I still have the money. I still have power." Eleanor shook her head. "No, Daniel. What you have is evidence of fraud, forgery, theft. And the Cayman authorities already have copies. They're on their way right now." Daniel's body stiffened. His mouth opened as if to argue, but no words came out. He grabbed the papers, ripping them, throwing them to the ground in a desperate attempt to erase the truth. But it was useless. The damage was done. Eleanor stepped back, her eyes never leaving him. She wasn't shouting. She didn't need to. Her silence, her calm, was more powerful than any anger. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing wildly. No, I can't go to prison. I won't. I'll leave. I'll disappear again." He rushed toward the sliding doors, heading for the dock where his rented yacht waited. But as he did, Eleanor's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw the message from Victor. "Local police have arrived. Stand back." Eleanor exhaled slowly, her heart steady. She had played her final card. The sound of sirens cut through the night air. Blue and red lights flashed outside the villa gates. Daniel froze mid-step, his body trembling. Eleanor's voice was calm as she spoke one last time. "You thought you could run from me. But you forgot one thing. I've already lived a life fighting battles. You're just a greedy boy who thought he was clever." Daniel turned, his face twisted with rage and fear. "This isn't over," he shouted. Eleanor looked at him one last time, her eyes sharp, her voice like stone. "Yes, Daniel. It is." Moments later, the police stormed the villa. Daniel's cries echoed as he was dragged away in handcuffs, his silk shirt torn, his stolen luxury crumbling around him. Eleanor stood still, her chest rising and falling, but her hands were steady. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply turned away, walking out of the villa as the officers secured the scene. The night air was warm, the sea breeze brushing her silver hair. For the first time in days, Eleanor felt the weight on her shoulders lift. The fight wasn't over yet, but the man who tried to destroy her was no longer free. The next morning, Eleanor sat in the small hotel cafe, staring at her untouched cup of coffee. The news had already spread across the Cayman Islands. Businessman arrested for fraud, forgery, and theft. Daniel Mercer's face was on every screen. The man who had once smirked at her across family dinners was now handcuffed, his head lowered in shame. Eleanor didn't feel joy. She didn't even feel anger anymore. What filled her was something quieter, heavier, relief. The war was over. She had fought and she had won. Her phone buzzed. It was a call from Isabella. "Mom." Isabella's voice cracked. She had clearly been crying. "I saw the news. They arrested him." "Yes," Eleanor said softly. There was silence for a moment. Then Isabella whispered, "I filed for divorce this morning. I can't let him drag me down any further." Eleanor closed her eyes. "You did the right thing, Bella. He chose greed over family. You deserve better than that." Her daughter sobbed quietly. "I just don't understand. Why would he do this to us?" Eleanor's voice was steady, but her heart ached for her child. Because some people can't stand to build their own path. They take what others have created. That's who he is. That evening, Eleanor flew back home. The moment she landed, she felt the weight of her city, her people, her life waiting for her. Reporters tried to corner her, asking questions about the fraud and the hotel. She simply said, "Justice has been done," and walked past them. At home, she unpacked slowly. She paused when she reached for the framed photograph of her late husband on the dresser. She touched the glass, whispering, "It's over. He can't touch us anymore." But the fight had left scars. The hotel was no longer hers. She had sold it to protect it, and though it was the right choice, the emptiness stung. Blue Haven had been her dream, her second child, her legacy. Letting it go had felt like letting go of part of herself. Yet, as she sat at her desk, she realized she could create something new. Something that wasn't built on marble floors and chandeliers, but on hope. She drafted a plan to start a scholarship fund for single mothers who wanted to study hospitality management. If she couldn't pass on the hotel, she would pass on the knowledge, the opportunities, the future. Weeks passed, and the courtroom trial began. Daniel sat before the judge, thinner, bitter, his eyes hollow. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He was sentenced to prison for fraud, forgery, and theft. His outburst at the verdict echoed in the courtroom. "This family ruined me." But Eleanor didn't flinch. She only thought, "You ruined yourself." After the trial, Isabella walked out of the courthouse holding her mother's hand. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was tired, but her eyes were clear. "Mom," she whispered, "I feel free for the first time in years." Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's because you are." Together they walked down the courthouse steps, surrounded by flashing cameras and murmurs. But Eleanor no longer cared about the noise around her. What mattered was the quiet strength inside her. That night, as the city lights flickered outside her window, Eleanor sat in her living room with Isabella. They shared tea, just like they used to before Daniel entered their lives. For the first time in months, Eleanor allowed herself a small smile. The betrayal had been devastating. The lies had cut deep. But in the end, Eleanor had not only protected her legacy, she had protected her daughter's future. And as she leaned back in her chair, she realized something important. Her hotel might have been taken away, but her dignity, her courage, and her family's strength could never be stolen. The world would remember Daniel Mercer as a fraud, but they would remember Eleanor Thorne as the woman who stood tall, who fought back, and who turned her pain into something greater. Eleanor's story ended not with revenge, but with freedom. Freedom from betrayal. Freedom from fear. Freedom to build a new legacy, one no one could ever steal.